Welcome back to another Free Agents podcast. As always, it's Baz here, and with me once again, I've got Rig, as known in the COD community as Rigalicious.
Ooh, big name.
In the studio, we've got Chocolate City Della Chocolate.
What's up?
Today we're going to be talking about, we're going to recap the first games. We're going to have players and teams who have impressed and disappointed so far. We're going to have a conversation around pretenders versus contenders and what we're looking forward to in the games next week. Before we get stuck into that, we got some breaking news with City Della Chocolate. You've got 24 seconds on the shot clock. Let's go.
All right, cool. So we had the regular season started this weekend with a classic going down between the Lakers and the Clippers. The Lakers came out on top 103 to 101. Zion has played a total of 30 minutes over the past two games and expressed his frustration at his lack of game time, obviously because of his injury. We had a confrontation between Joel Embiid and Milton today on the 76ers bench after the 76ers lost to the Pacers. And in probably the funniest news of the week, Lou Williams is still in the league-mandated 10-day quarantine after stopping past the Magic City Strip Club for some chicken wings and apparently a lap dance.
Wingtings.
Wingtings.
That's it. Loves him some thighs. So
the news is as well, Baz. Apparently, the lady who was at the club who worked there said that he did not just come in for the wings and left. He actually bought a dance as well.
Oh,
that's the news.
Don't blame the guy. I'll be there for the full. I'll be there for a full course if I was there. I'm already getting quarantined anyway. Might as well just go at it.
May as well.
All right, let's do a quick recap of the games played so far this week. You know, Mavs and Houston were in a shootout.
Yeah, man. Covington's just playing like a big boy. Like he blocked Porzingis at the rim. I'm pretty sure he had the overtime hit the overtime layup off James Harden's miss. Harden did Harden things, put up 49 points. What I think is important is that they're surviving not having a big man. I know they definitely got out rebounded, but they were somehow able to overcome it, even though it was very close in the end.
Yeah, and you know, Memphis and Portland, they were basically like a 6-pointer type of game where catching up on each other. It was a big loss for Memphis there to the Trailblazers.
Yeah,
in the race for the 8 seeds.
As we talked about, I think Portland is definitely going to catch them, and I definitely think this is the precursor to that 8-9 two-game playoff to see who's going to get in. And I've just got this feeling that Memphis is just going to drop further and Portland's going to jump them.
Yeah, and you know, Pelicans lose the first 2 games. I'm not really shocked at that because I would have marked those 2 games as a loss anyway.
I don't think the Pelicans would have, mate. They thought they were cooking. And like you look at JJ Redick's face in that meme, and he's just like, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." Like this may be the first time the man's missed playoffs since his freshman year of high school. I'm worried about the Pels.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how we go in the next couple of games. We'll talk about the schedule later on, but it'll be very interesting. The Spurs beat the Kings, which actually surprised me.
Climbing the ladder. Can they get in? Can they get in? Man's excited.
And then the Bucks beat the Celtics.
Celtics, again, their stars failed to perform when needed. And Giannis stamps his mark on this game with a 36-point, 15-rebound win.
Did anyone see that monster dunk as well? And the Celtics are like...
Man wants to know, though, is that a 7th foul? Is the man getting 7 fouls? Because Marcus Smart, he slid across in time, I thought. But, you know.
That's it. And then the Pacers beat the 76ers.
My boy TJ Warren putting up 53 points. Ooh. 68% from the field. That needs to be noted. And Joel Embiid, 41 and 21.
That's what you get for cash considerations these days, man.
Silly sons.
Yeah, that's it. Going off the games played so far this week, which players and teams have impressed or disappointed you so far from what you've seen?
Firstly, I want to start with the Clippers. I'm actually impressed with what the Clippers are putting on the field. Like, you look at it and they got no Lou Williams, no Montrezl Harrell, and they still were able to keep pace with the Lakers. And at some points, obviously, ahead of the Lakers. Obviously, they went down in the end. And then they come out and they absolutely obliterate the Pelicans. I think at one point they were up 42 points at some stage.
Yeah, it was a whooping.
And then on top of that, they're giving Paul George and Kawhi Leonard a chance to rest later on in the games. Like, you know it's bad when Rodney McGrew is getting in the court.
And they still put up big numbers. Kawhi's putting up 24, Paul George putting up 28, Reggie Jackson putting up 15 points.
I feel like Paul George has had a bit of a retro moment. I finally feel like the layoff of 4 months has made him healthy and ready to go. Like, it's not like he wasn't performing, but this kind of looks like the Paul George of Indiana Pacers Paul George. I feel like when he moved to OKC, he lost his way a little bit, having to share the ball with Russell Westbrook. But now that he's at the Clippers, I feel like he's getting more of the touches and more of that superstar mentality. The man's hit 14 threes in 2 games. He's cooking, and he's shooting well over 50%. So I think moving forward, you add Montrezl Harrell and you add Lou Williams to that. And that's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by them because when we spoke last week, we were quite unsure. We were thinking they might actually fall out the 2 seed.
Yeah, I thought
Where they're kind of looking like the team that's going to make the finals, if not go further.
Yeah, we said they were going to get jumped. And,
Yeah.
and realistically, they've far exceeded my expectations in that first 2 games. So it's obvious that, Kawhi is ready and he's coming ready to play. Paul George is playing above and beyond what I expected. And hopefully Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell just sort of slide into that. But my concern is when is Montrezl Harrell going to return? I know he's grieving his grandmother's passing.
Well, Montrezl Harrell, he has been getting tested every day since he has been away, and he has tested negative, which is good. So when he does return, he will have to only come in for a 4-day mandatory quarantine.
Yeah, so they don't need him in the until they get to the playoffs, but obviously you'd like him to get 1 or 2 games in before you head into the playoffs.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to see how they adapt to Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell because they were averaging like 30 plus points combined off the bench.
And it really changes their bench sort of dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure really who can kind of replace those two. I mean, obviously Joakim Noah is getting more minutes behind Zubac, but he's no Montrezl Harrell. And the scoring, I think they were averaging, would you say, almost 30-something points a game?
I actually think it's probably closer to 40 when I think about it. I think they're around like 17, 18 points each.
So that's just putting more pressure on Kawhi and PG to pick up that points. And you're not going to get that out of someone like Zubac or Landry Shamet, so you need those guys coming off the bench to give you those points.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on Dallas?
Man, I was extremely impressed with Porzingis, 39 points, 16 rebounds.
The unicorn.
Yeah, he played really well. He kind of like showed those glimpses of what he was like at the Knicks. Like where he got that nickname from, moving up and down the floor well, shooting pretty well. I thought he could have taken more advantage of in the post against a smaller lineup that the Rockets put forward. But obviously on the flip side of having a small lineup, it means they're running up and down the court a lot faster, which is harder for the big man to keep up.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about your thoughts on the Celtics?
Oh, man, I'm very disappointed with the Celtics. Jason Tatum, I know it's only 1 game, but you can't have 5 points off 2 of 18 shooting. It's just, and with 2 free
Especially a guy of his caliber.
He's a superstar.
Yeah.
Someone that's putting up 23 points on average per game, that's very disappointing.
Yeah, you can't afford, in my opinion, they ride off the back of him. You can't afford to have him shooting that poorly. Marcus Smart can't be your leading point scorer. I thought Kemba Walker played okay. I would have liked to see him be more aggressive, considering Tatum wasn't being anywhere near
Take over that leadership role when he's struggling.
That's it. I would have wanted him to see what he did at the Hornets, where he's like, all right, Tatum's struggling. It's my go. On the back of that, I think that like at the end of the day, you are coming up against the Bucks, who are a very good defensive team. I think you're even top 5 in the league in defensive rating, but you need to score points. And I just felt like it was a game that sort of, they looked a bit flat.
Yeah, I think looking at it, the most concerning thing I see is he only had 2 attempts from the free throw line.
Yeah.
Like if you're struggling getting that jump shot, you just got to keep driving to the basket to get some rhythm.
Yeah,
going.
and that's always been my concern with Tatum is I feel like he spends far too much time with that small mid-range game or putting up the 3. He's a big boy. He's 6'8", and he's definitely over 110 kegs or close to 110 kegs. He should be pushing himself to the basket. He's not the most athletic or quickest first step on him, but he can surely do something to get to the basket to make the defender hesitate and question what he's going to do rather than continually do that step back fadeaway jumper or pull up in the mid-range. He's got to put you in a position where you can put them into foul trouble and get to that line.
Impressed or disappointed with the Pacers?
Oh, mate, I'm blown away by the Pacers. Like, unbelievable. I'm shocked, really. I did not expect them to perform the way they're performing. As you all know, Sabonis is out for the season. Oladipo was a late inclusion into the bubble. At one point, there was talks he wasn't going to come back. Miles Turner looks healthy for once. And then the new stud, TJ Warren, Mr. Cash Considerations, I think that's his new nickname, put up 53 on 68% shooting while beating it for the first time in a while a healthy full-strength 76ers. I don't know if that just means the Pacers are really good or if that means the 76ers aren't who we thought they were going to be.
I don't think my man has ever scored. Just looking through his stats now, I don't think he's ever scored anything near that. That was a career high.
That's once in a lifetime.
points.
He's not. Let's be honest. He's not doing it again.
Nah,
but
no way.
Still showing out.
But I don't know. We doubt him, but next game, who knows, could go for 60.
56, mate. 56.
Pelicans.
Boring.
The Pelicans.
Boring.
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I would have thought that they're coming in with Mr. Conspiracy Theory over here with all the help and all the easy run to the playoffs and giving them 4 games to be within the 8th seed to get a chance to run that 2-game playoff, that they would have taken that and run with it. They've done the opposite. They have underperformed. And as Choc mentioned earlier, Zion looks either injured or visibly frustrated with the lack of game time. And it just seems like it's the Brandon Ingram show, bit of ISO ball, and that's not what's going to win you games in the bubble.
Yeah, they look like hot trash.
So hot garbage is about right. Do you, Baz and Reed, question for you both. Do you think that Zion should be put in late in the game against the Jazz? Won it down what, 3 points I think it was. Do you think that he comes in? He should come in late?
I'm playing Zion as every minute I can get. If he's healthy, and that's the key, and we don't know that yet. If the man's healthy, he's a freak. He should be playing 30-plus minutes per game, and especially when you're pushing for that 8th seed, he needs to play as much as possible. Otherwise, you're going home. There's no second chance. They need to, especially with the way the Portland Trailblazers are playing, you need to take advantage of whatever games you could. I felt like they let that Jazz game slip away from them in the end. Obviously, they got absolutely slapped by the Clippers. They put 16 threes up in a half, one off the NBA record.
Yeah, they set a franchise record for threes today.
That's it. So you look at it and you go, okay, maybe you can say the Clippers are a fantastic team, great defensively, and we just had a really hot night. But I can't excuse the way they performed against the Jazz.
Because the Jazz looked flat.
Flat, yeah. They look flat. They look like they weren't really too keen to take the game by the scruff of the neck. They just were like, oh, we'll go through the motions and we still somehow get out of jail here and get a win.
I think what was consistent is you see, in comparison to the Pelicans, the Jazz were consistent with all their scorers. You know, Royce O'Neal, 12 points. Slow-Mo Joe, 13. Rudy, 14. Donovan, 20. Conley, 20. Jordan Clarkson, 23. They're all putting up numbers. Whereas, you know, you're relying on people like Brandon Ingram and Drew Holiday to really carry the Pelicans.
Yeah, and Brandon Ingram has been playing really well, don't get me wrong, but it's not ISO time.
But this will be an issue with them for the rest of the games in the bubble and going forward to next season.
Yeah, and I think what we've discussed about is, are they going to keep Brandon Ingram and Zion on the same team? Are they going to keep Favors in the lineup as well? Are they going to keep Drew Holiday? Like, what's their lineup going to look like moving forward? Because I know it's a bit early to call it, but they're packing their bags when that bubble, the regular season and the bubble's over, and they're heading home. I don't see them making it at all.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, to see how the games unfold at the bubble, and then if there's any personnel changes moving forward. Pretenders and contenders.
Here we go.
We'll ask you a few questions around who your contenders are and who your pretenders are. We'll start with the Western Conference first because, we love the West. It's very interesting.
West's going to win it all.
But we're going to have a conversation about the East today. Show some East love.
Who talks about the East?
We're going to show some love to the East. Lakers.
I mean, like, today's game was poor. I think they had their
Against the Raptors.
Against the Raptors. They had their worst shooting performance of the season. But, and this is a little bit of credit to the East already, the Raptors are, again, top 3 defensive team in the league, and Kyle Lowry had a hell of a game. So I'm not going to sit there and say it's a season-defining moment for the Lakers. It probably means more for the Raptors than it does for the Lakers. But they played really, really well against the Clippers. Obviously undermanned Clippers, but they got the job done, which has obviously solidified them as the number 1 seed. I think pretty much moving forward, even if they lost every game, I think they'd be okay. I'm really concerned about their shooting. Their role players are underperforming. Like Danny Green was 0 for 6 today against the Raptors from 3. You can't afford to have him missing that much.
The entire team shot 10 from 40 from 3-point range, 25%.
Yeah.
In comparison to, not really much of a big difference, 11 out of 36 against the Clippers on Friday.
That's what I mean. I think the shooting has been poor, which is concerning considering that a lot of other players, including my boy D-Rob from the Heat, are shooting better and have said they feel it's easier to shoot from the 3-point line with less fans and less distractions. So that's my biggest concern. AD played really well in the first game, so I have no doubt he's going to perform. He was a little bit quiet today, but again...
14 points, 3 assists, 6 rebounds.
Yeah, that's it. A little bit quiet today, but again, he's not going to put up 40 every night, but against the big teams, I expect him to perform. And I think against a team like the Raptors, where they had Marc Gasol, who's quite a physical player, and Ibaka, who's got a lot of length and can get up and down the floor with Davis, he's going to struggle a little bit. LeBron... I want to see him score a little bit more. I know he hit 2 big back-to-back threes, I think, early in the third quarter today against the Raptors, but I just want to see him maybe start to average a bit more than 20 points a game. Because if you take away, I think they're second in the league in terms of duos scoring points in the game. And if AD's not scoring and LeBron's not scoring, who's going to get them their points?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I think they'll go into a different level when the playoffs start.
Yeah, like there's definitely going to be like playoff mode.
LeBron.
Yeah, playoff LeBron. We all know that's coming, but I don't want to see them lose momentum because like in the bubble, there's not going to be the NBA fandom to get you up. You're not going to have the fans to lift you up when you're struggling. The motivation and momentum's got to come from within.
Clippers.
Mate, I'm excited to see them back to full strength. Obviously, as I said earlier, don't know when Montrezl Harrell's coming back, and Lou Williams is all about the thighs at the moment. So I think, I think the concern for the Clippers is what will happen when those two come back. Will they miss a beat? Will they be the same? That's my real big concern. But in terms of how they're performing, even without those guys, really well. To go down to the Lakers by only a few points, considering you're missing 40 points worth of scoring
Off the bench.
and obviously Montrezl Harrell's hustle and things like that, it's really, really exciting for Clippers fans.
There's a lot of promise there.
Yeah, 100%, great promise. And then obviously you look at PG and you look at Kawhi and you're like, they look like they're in fine form. So I have no concern with the Clippers at all. I think, in my opinion, it's a 2-horse race in the West, Lakers or Clippers, and I'm leaning towards the Clippers having an edge just because of the way they played against the Lakers and then the Pelicans, and knowing how much talent they are still yet to come to the team moving forward. But yeah, it's an LA show in the West, and everybody's chasing it.
What's your thoughts on Denver?
Yeah, well, it's hard because they got a lot of injury concerns. They obviously lost to the Heat in their first game, but obviously Gary Harris is out with a muscle strain. Will Barton didn't play, right knee soreness, and Jamal Murray's got left hamstring tightness. So that's 3 of your guards, 2 starting guards, and then your 6-man in Gary Harris. So I'm sitting there going, that's a lot of scoring and talent that are off at the moment. But you're seeing Michael Porter Jr. didn't play too badly today, and Bol got quite a few rebounds and blocks. So it'd be interesting to see sort of what happens with those guys. The big concern for me is their pace going to be too slow for Denver? Are they going to be able to get up and down the court fast enough to compete with some of the teams in the West? And obviously, is Bol and Michael Porter Jr. going to have a bigger share of the minutes moving forward if these guys, Gary Harris, Barton Jr. and Jamal Murray, aren't going to be playing much moving forward? But they're what I would call a bubble contender. Don't count them out.
As you know, Houston had an extremely high scoring game against the Mavs. It was 150.
153.
Yeah, 153 to 149, I think it ended up. Obviously went to overtime, but I don't think small ball wins championships. They got severely out-rebounded. They lack some serious length. They're starting either PJ Tucker or Robert Covington as their tallest players at 6'9". They've got no centers really on the team at all on the bench, except for, I think, Nene, if he's even still around. So, again, similar to Denver, to me, they're a bubble contender. Russell Westbrook and Harden are going to combine for close to 60 points a game regardless. But is that going to be enough to put up with the fact that they're going to struggle to rebound? They got out of jail, in my opinion, against the Mavs.
Well, they had 43 rebounds today in comparison to the Mavs putting up 55 rebounds, and the Mavs put up 13 offensive rebounds alone in comparison to the 7 by the Rockets.
You can't afford second chance points.
No.
Let's just say they hit 2s on every single one that's offering. That's 26 points that you've given out because of rebounding. And in my opinion, Kristaps Porzingis is not even a super aggressive offensive rebounder. What if you come up against someone like the Lakers, who have Anthony Davis and LeBron, and JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, an extremely large, athletic and aggressive team who really go after the ball? You're going to struggle to box out those guys while trying to play small ball. They do have pace, though. They are definitely got pace, which is really good for getting up and down the floor and scoring. But if you miss shots and you don't rebound, what happens?
Yeah, I think they can shoot the lights out on some nights, and it would determine how far they go.
Yeah.
And who they play. Because if they finish third, and then they beat the first round matchup, and then they play the Clippers in the semis, they have a better chance of beating the Clippers compared to beating the Lakers.
Well, they really need to hope for none of the LA teams, because both LA teams have length and they don't have length. They're not quicker than both LA teams, and they're certainly not bigger than them. So they need to be playing those teams that are like the Jazz, like the Denver Nuggets, who are a bit slower in pace, so they can outrun them, and that the size advantage won't be so much of a difference, in my opinion. But I think for the Rockets, that was a big win, because now obviously the Mavs have a game further back, and they've got the head-to-head on top of them. So that was a huge thing for the Rockets to get that win, because realistically, a strong box out from Finney Smith and Kristaps, and the game's a lot
It's
harder.
done,
to win.
it's over.
It's over, yeah.
Well, what my now concern is, or what my question is that from looking at the team sheets from yesterday's game, they only had 8 people. House, Tucker, Covington, Westbrook, Harden, Green, Rivers, and Macklemore.
Yeah, like you look at that and you're like, I think out of everyone you said, the tallest person there, I think might be PJ Tucker or Daniel House outside of Covington. So I'm like, you've got 7 guards.
Yeah, I think Houston have the expectations to go to the Western Conference Finals, and they're going to be playing a LA team regardless in the semis.
Yeah, and I think that's a big concern for Houston fans is how are you going to match up against that length? But again, I'm not going to count out 2 former MVPs teaming up on one backcourt. That can be 70, 80, possibly more points. Plus, Russell Westbrook seemed to look like he controlled the ball a bit better than usual. But again, turnovers have been a problem for him in the past. So again, if the two of them combine for 60, 70, 80 points, that's going to be hard to beat on a daily basis no matter how much you rebound. But let's say, as we spoke about earlier, if they have an off shooting night, they're going to struggle.
They will struggle.
And they're not defensively solid, if you ask me.
No, they don't want to play defense. They just want to get the ball back, shoot within 7 seconds.
It's Phoenix Suns like 2005, 2006. 100%. That's it. That's what it is. And I don't know if in today's current NBA that's going to work if you're missing shots. It's all good when you're getting shots, but if you're missing shots, how are you going to come back from that?
Oklahoma City.
I mean, hard to tell. Really hard to tell. I think they don't have enough talent, and I'm sorry to say that to OKC fans. As I said, we pushed hard.
I accept your apology.
I do not accept your apology.
We pushed hard for them last week in the awards, but I just don't think they have enough talent to go all the way. I really don't. I don't think when it comes to them competing against the top 2 teams in the LA Lakers and Clippers that they have enough talent to go that far. But they've been underestimated all season, and look where they're sitting now.
Is that around not having that one star player and too many people are contributing?
No, I always think you can win by committee, but is CP3 past it too much that when it comes down to 15 seconds left and he's got to get a bucket, he's not quick enough anymore, and he's certainly not athletic or big enough to manhandle someone to get to the basket. He's going to have to do a step back or a bit of trickery, or they're going to have to run a solid play to get that point in that period of time. And the other thing is Danilo Gallinari. He is a big linchpin. If he can go for 20 to 25 plus a game, then there might be some sort of inkling to say, yeah, you guys can make it. But if he's just going to give you your 10 to 15, they don't have enough. They're going to do it by committee regardless, but I think the lack of that individual star is going to cripple them in the end.
It looks like it is a committee as it goes now. There's not anyone on here putting up more than 35 minutes in the first game they played in the bubble. So it looks like everyone is sharing the minutes there.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be by committee. I agree with what you're saying around the last shots. If it comes down to the last shot and you need to get a basket, I don't know who's going to take it. It's going to be either Schroeder, CP3, Shai Gilgeous, or Gallinari.
And they could all take it in some aspect, and it comes down to probably the situation and who needs what at when. But, I mean, I look at CP3 and it has to be him. He's got to step up and take it by the scruff of the neck and run with it. But one thing I do want to point out and that people don't consider is Steven Adams is a man. He plays like a man. That Jason Momoa-looking bastard can play. So when you're going to have people like Anthony Davis and some Montrezl Harrell, he's not going to back down whatsoever.
No.
He's coming full hammer and tongs. So the question is, more or less, can he match up well enough against the larger stars to allow for the committee in the guard rotation to help OKC win in a 7-game series? Right now, I look at it and I'm like, if they're playing the Jazz, that 4-5 seed, they're beating the Jazz. I'm confident OKC's beating the Jazz. Next round,
Against an LA team.
Against an LA team, that's going to be a tough ask in 7 games. I just don't think they have enough to get across the line.
Yeah. It will be intriguing to see how they perform in the playoffs.
But I think they could upset someone. I think they could definitely come in and push a team to the brink or beat a team. And as specifically the Jazz or the Rockets or Denver, I could easily see them beating a team like that. I don't see them beating.
That's going to be a big game
LA.
on Tuesday morning. Denver versus OKC.
Yeah, and again, coming back to the injuries with Denver, how they're going to look like in the playoffs if those guys are still injured. So I think OKC has not an easy run, but they should get through the first round sitting in that 4-5 seed, assuming that the Rockets don't jump them. If they move into that 6-7 seed, then they're going to have a tough first round matchup either against Denver or the Clippers, and it might be a different story. If they sit in that 4-5 seed, I think they can definitely beat the Jazz.
So we spoke about Utah earlier. You know, they narrowly beat the Pelicans, and then they lost to the Thunder this morning.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on how they're going to do?
Like, for me, they don't pass the eye test. I know Choc touched earlier on their statistics, and the statistics are there. They're all performing exactly as they performed over the season, but they don't pass the eye test in the sense that I don't see them hungry. I don't see them working well as a team and gelling, and they just look a little bit out of sorts. I know Donovan Mitchell is hitting his numbers, but it's the way he's getting his points. They don't look like they're coming easy at all. I'm not sure whether the relationship between Gobert and Mitchell that caused this whole NBA lockdown to occur has been repaired.
Bloody COVID.
From him licking microphones. I don't know if that's been repaired. I think no one really knows unless you're inside that team in that locker room and know what they're doing. But similar to what you touched on earlier, they're like Denver. They're a home court advantage. I think people have said the Utah Jazz are the worst in the sense of they are the hardest fans to play against. So obviously in the bubble, you're not going to have that. But they just don't look like they're doing much.
Yeah, I think players can still not have the best relationship off the court, but then on the court, they can make it work.
It's sort of you throw all that garbage away and just get down to business.
Yeah, and they certainly could get through it, but
they lost Bogdanovich.
Huge loss.
And he was averaging 20 points per game. He's their best three-point shooter.
His shooting, to me, is the big loss.
Because they're asking Clarkson to step up.
Yeah, and Clarkson shot poorly in the first half. It seemed like he was trying too hard to hit that role of being that scorer for them. Second half, he lit up, and I think he's a bit like that. He's a bit of hot and cold type shooter, but not having Bogan, and I think the other thing is he can play defense, deceptively good at defense, but not having him is 20 points a game less.
So if you were to pick a team in the West outside of an LA team to make the finals, who would it be?
It has to be Denver. They've got far more depth than anyone else. They have a star in Jokic, and they also have established veterans around him. Like Paul Millsap can play. He's played in big games before, and they've got a strong guard rotation, and they've got the 3-and-D in Torrey Craig, and they've got a knockdown shooter in Jamal Murray.
How about the upcoming performance of Bol for the Nuggets? I think that's also another call out there.
Yeah, the bubble stud Bol. I think he's an enigma. He's like, how many 7'3" guys are you getting that can play? Who can shoot the three, who can run the floor like he does.
He's fluid from outside the line. He's so fluid in the way he shoots his threes. It's fantastic.
But I don't know how much or how many minutes he's going to get into playoff time when things get really serious. Like, he's only played, 5 games? Or it would be 8, more than 8 by the time they get to the playoffs. But are you going to be giving him long established minutes running into playoffs?
I think he gets 5-10 minutes a game.
Yeah, that's it. So
in the bubble so far, he's probably put up maybe 10 minutes max.
So what happens when Jokic goes off? You're relying on Herman Gomez
and Plumlee
and
Millsap.
So they have the depths and they have the NBA veteran talent that I think could push those LA teams to a 7-game series. And they definitely play strong defense. They're a slow-paced team, but they play strong defense and can shoot the ball.
I think Jamal Murray has to step up eventually.
Yeah.
They're on the verge of becoming a Jokic and Murray duo.
They're almost a duo.
They're not quite there.
Yeah, he's not quite taken that next step to like a established star or new star. He's still sitting a bit like an NBA starter, and that's it.
Yeah.
If he takes that leap, him and Jokic could be dangerous. And I think with Jokic's quite severe weight loss, he's obviously going to be getting up and down the court a bit better, and you might see a bit more of him moving those pick and rolls and getting to the basket. But that for me, they have the length, they have the shooting, they have the depth. And that could push an LA team to 7-game series.
Yeah. Yeah, look, Murray is very interesting. He has the potential to become an all-star. I think he needs to do that going forward next season. Otherwise, they might shake things up in Denver.
Yeah, I think they might blow it up. Maybe not after this season because obviously with COVID it's quite a different season, so it's a bit hard to project and see where they're going. But I think if next season they're not performing, they might move on from Murray and Millsap and even Gary Harris and Will Barton and just try and build around that Jokic, Porter Jr. and that Bol, that youth mixed with an already established star and see where it takes them.
Moving on, finally some love is being shown to the Eastern Conference.
We've heard you, people. We've heard you.
Pretenders and contenders of the East. We'll start
the
with
entire East are pretenders.
we'll start with the favourites of the East.
Your favourites of the East.
Milwaukee
Bucks. Mate, you're going to be a contender if you've got the reigning and top 2 option this year's MVP in Giannis. He took care of a full-strength team while missing Bledsoe and my boy Paddy Connaughton. White man can't jump. Have you seen the kid? Vert for days.
15 boards today.
Yeah, unbelievable. He looked like
amazing.
He looked like he hadn't missed a beat, and I don't know who's going to beat him one-on-one, but I definitely think that it's a team that is going to the Eastern Conference Finals regardless. I don't think you can't sit there and say that someone's got to beat them. They're going to roll through the first, second round. No worries. Done and dusted.
They will make the Eastern Conference Finals as a minimum.
Yeah, 100%. And their expectation is finals, and
so it should be with the team they have.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about it last week. You need Chris Middleton to perform, and he put up a solid game. 18 points.
8 assists, 5 rebounds.
He did what you need the second man in the duo to do.
Yeah. They will make the Eastern Conference Finals.
Not that that's hard.
But it's not. It's not hard. Not with who they have to verse to get into the Eastern Conference Finals. But as a minimum, they will be making that.
Well, yeah, they're going to finish first because they're obviously 7 games ahead of the Raptors.
Yeah, and who they're most likely playing is going to be the Toronto Raptors.
That's who I think is going to be.
Who are being slept on.
Yeah, but I want one quick point. They're going to play a Nets team in the first round. I did say you can rest Giannis first round. Who the Nets even got? I'm sitting there going like, you could beat them with Paddy Connaughton starting and that's it. Just put him out there by himself. The Nets are garbage. So Bucks are going to have a sweep in the first round, and from there it might get a little bit harder. But yeah, they cruise to the Eastern Conference Finals. But yeah, going back to the Raptors, I think they've been slept on. I slept on them until today. For probably a possible 2 or 3 reasons. Everyone always sleeps on Toronto just as a general city. No one considers it. Obviously, being a Canadian team, no one thinks about it. So their defensive rating is second in the NBA after the Clippers, and that's with Kawhi gone. That's impressive. Like that's
Nick Nurse has done a great job.
Fantastic. And everyone calls him the Bill Belichick, so the New England Patriots coach of the NBA. And the reason for it is because his ability to change and adapt schemes mid-game. And I think that's one of the things that makes him a good coach. It also makes the Raptors good because obviously they're not sticking to just one scheme. They're constantly changing and adapting to what they see in front of them. But the 2 key points for me is Lowry. He's playing like playoff Lowry from last year. Playing really well. Hit big shot. I think he had a step back over Anthony Davis, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, and he created it to Kuzma as well.
Yeah. So Larry's playing fantastic. Spicy P is playing like Spicy P, and I'm really happy to see it. He's moving to established start now. He's moving on from the most improved player to I'm here and it's my time. So that's good to see. And then the 2 people I want to touch on. I know we had a great finals, and that's why everyone's sort of noticing now. But Fred VanVleet played absolutely incredible as sort of like a when Lowry's off or when Lowry's in foul trouble, he comes in and he controls the ball, but then he has some knockdown shots. And then, I'm going to butcher his name, but OJ Anunoby, I think that's how it is.
OG Anunoby.
Yeah, mate. He played so well today.
23 points.
He played so well, and he knows his role. He actually kind of reminds me a bit of what Spicy P was like 2-3 years ago. He just does what he's good at. And I think they're a very complete team. The 2 things I want to, the last 2 things on the Raptors I want to put out are, as I touched on earlier, 2 big men that I think can play with anyone in the league, Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka.
Yeah.
Like, Marc Gasol is deceptively still good in the post. I know he's obviously a bit older than he was back in his Memphis days, but he does the right moves at the right time, and he doesn't make many mistakes. That's what I like about him. You know what you're going to get out of Marc Gasol every game.
Because he didn't play much last finals.
No, barely.
He barely played. And I rate Marc Gasol.
He's a good player, really good player. And I think he's probably the old era of NBA big man. He's starting to shoot a little bit more, but he's still more of a pick and pop or post up kind of offensive weapon. So that's a little bit outdated. But mixed with Serge Ibaka, I think it works perfectly. Because you've got the inside-outside presence. We know Serge Ibaka loves to shoot 3. Maybe too much, as we saw from his time
Oklahoma City.
at Oklahoma City.
Let's not bring that up. It still hurts.
But he can shoot the ball quite comfortably. So I think you've got a complete team. Like from 1 to 5, you have everyone who knows their role and knows what they're doing and they do it well.
Yeah.
So I had the Raptors going to the finals.
Interesting.
Interesting, but we'll see. But I have them as going to the finals. I think they beat the Bucks in a 7-game series.
That is going to be very exciting.
And I think the only reason that I'm so confident now is just seeing the way they handled LeBron and Anthony Davis today against the Lakers. They played poorly, and I don't think it was anything to do with how Anthony Davis and LeBron were doing things, but how the Raptors handled them is what made the difference.
Yeah, it'd be good to see the Raptors versus Bucks and how they defend Giannis. If Giannis can make the NBA finals, because as we all know, he struggles.
Well, if he doesn't
in the
make
finals, in the Eastern Conference Finals.
yeah, if he doesn't make the finals, I think he's gone. So that's another just little point to put in there. If he doesn't make the finals, I think the Bucks are saying goodbye to their best player and the MVP of the league.
Mm. Maybe we'll see. We'll see how that goes, but that's a conversation for another episode. 76ers.
I'm over the process. Flat out, I'm
Boring.
done. I'm done with the process. It should have been processed and delivered, and I'm over it. You have I'm going to say the best three-headed monster in the league in Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Tobias Harris, and yet you seem to struggle, even with them performing really well. You seem to struggle in beating teams of your caliber. Like, Joel Embiid's out here running his mouth and waving to the crowd when they're beating teams like the Wizards and the Nets. But when he comes up against a team that's really good, he performs, but I think he doesn't lift to the sort of performances I want to see from him.
I mean, do we judge that on today's stats? Look at that. 21 rebounds alone.
Oh,
Just 21 rebounds and 41 points.
He played fantastically, and I think it's just more like today was a great game. I'm not going to knock him for his performance, but they still lost to a Pacers team missing
Their all-star Sabonis.
Yeah, and with Oladipo still returning from injury, they should beat the Pacers.
They should be big Pacers. Every time I watch the 76ers and I look where they are in the standings and how they go in the finals or the playoffs, they look like they're on the verge of being blown up every time.
Yeah.
The roster is going to get blown up. It's just bound to happen. And I think they look around the other teams around them with Milwaukee, the Celtics, and the Raptors, and they go, we're not going to beat these guys.
And they should be on that level, though. They have the star
should
power
be, but
and the
they're not.
roster to be on that level. But as you said, they're just not. And I think that's what disappoints me the most about them is like, yes, I was trusting the process 2 years ago, but it should have arrived. And it seems like to me it hasn't arrived. I might be jumping to a bit of a conclusion, but I look at this team and you should have beaten the Pacers if you thought you were going to beat somebody this postseason.
Yeah, it's hard to go off one game being played so far.
It's
but
tough, but
with what we did see, though,
yeah.
it gives you an indication of where they are at.
Yeah, and that's like I think every one of the big three hit over 20 points or close to 20 points a game, and I'm like, so you're getting 60 points, and obviously Embiid had 40, so you had 80 points from three guys. How are you still losing?
Yeah.
What's the rest of your team doing? And I think for me, what are the big concerns moving forward is what do you do with Al Horford? Big signing obviously was Al Horford coming in my opinion, not a good signing because
He's getting paid.
Oh, he's getting paid. He's on good money, but it's also you've got two big men that like to be in the post.
Yeah.
And I think the post is already clogged up. Ben Simmons is shooting more threes, but hasn't quite developed that shot yet. Al Horford lives in the post, occasionally steps out for the three, and Embiid is the post. So you've got a very clogged up middle. So Ben Simmons can't get to the basket. Tobias Harris is kind of struggling to get to the basket. He's more having to shoot that mid-range shot. And what do? Obviously, Al Horford's gone to the bench, and they've moved in Shake Milton. And as Choc mentioned in the breaking news, there was a big disagreement between Embiid and Milton. So I'm like, are they going to gel enough together to do something in the postseason, or is it going to be another 76ers, oh, trust the process, we'll do it next year?
Yeah, I think they should. If they make the Eastern Conference Finals, they'll keep it.
Yeah.
If anything less than that, there will be some changes.
Yeah, and they have to do something. There's got to be a change at some point. And I'm starting to look, obviously a Heat fan, so I'm going to side with Butler, but I'm starting to look at him and realise maybe the 76ers have issues. Maybe it's MB doesn't play well with others. But there's something going on at the 76ers where they should, with a good solid coach like Brett Brown, with a good roster on paper, they should surely be performing a little bit better, or at least dominating against teams like the Pacers. My concern is that the Raptors and Bucks are getting better and going to run away, and
They're staying the same.
they're staying the same.
We touched on the Celtics as probably the third best team in the East.
Yeah, they on paper they are the best team in the East. You've got Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Hayward, and Tatum.
Everyone's kind of forgotten about Gordon Hayward.
After his injury, he's not the same Hayward he was at the Jazz, but that's 4 20-point-a-game scorers on any given night. So I think my concern is, one, who's going to step up and be the starter. Obviously, we saw Tatum struggle first game. It could have been first game sort of bubble jitters, but who's going to step up for them and really take a control? I would like to see Walker do what he did in Charlotte and at UConn and sort of be like, all right, I'm the man. Let's ride on me, boys. I'm going to take us to the promised land. Because I think Tatum's still a bit young. Brown's still finding his role as a starting sort of like soon-to-be all-star or sort of like fringe all-star. And then the one big key for me is who's going to be their big man. Tice and Cantor. I just don't think there's enough in those two, one from an offensive point of view and two from a defensive point of view, to be not dominated by someone in the East, be it Giannis, be it Embiid. I think when it comes down to nitty-gritty, that's my concern for the Celtics.
Because Walker should be the leader on the team, because I don't think it's Tatum's time yet.
No, he's a
still
scorer.
too young.
He's a scorer, and he's going to be a fantastic player. He already is a fantastic. He's going to be a great leader in 2 or 3 years. I think for right now, Walker's going to go, hey guys, I'm an established NBA All-Star. I'm going to run this team. Come with me.
Yeah.
But definitely on paper, best team in the East, I think.
Do you see them causing an upset?
They could, but I don't think they will. They have the talent to do it, but I just don't think that they will do it. Just based on what I saw against the Bucks, it seems like they're just not quite together yet. But my worry is Danny Ainge is going to do another blow-up, or he's going to lose another one of those stars, and they're going to be down a Hayward, or down a move a Brown on, or sometimes I worry Danny Ainge is trying to change things too much to get there.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with that. It's so difficult because Jaylen Brown, he strikes me as an energy guy and should be taking that 6-man role.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but he's also worth a lot. He's 20 points a game.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to leave that guy on the bench? He's 20, I think he's under 25 years of age. You can't afford to be leaving a guy like that on the bench. It's not like it's Lou Williams where you're a 30-something-year-old man who's already had most of an NBA career as a 6-man. Is he going to take on that role, or is he going to be like, well, hang on, I want to start, like James Harden-esque?
Yeah, but I think that is kind of the issue at the Celtics at the moment. There's not much clarity around their roles.
Yeah, but as I said,
which has caused problems.
But they'll definitely be fine in the East up until the time they come up against the Bucks or the Raptors.
Yeah, that's right. 'Cause at the moment, they're third.
Yeah.
So if it finishes today, they will play the 76ers.
That's a great matchup. I would watch that. That's really good. But outside of them, man, the Heat's not going to do anything. I don't think the Pacers will push anyone in a 7-game series that much. And Lord knows, we might as well not even invited the Magic Nets to the bloody bubble. Should have just left them at home.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. And I'm not even going to talk about... Actually, I'm not going to say the word Wizards. I'm over it.
Are we going to go back there again, Rick?
Garbage. Rui played well, but credit to Rui. He showed out. He told me a lesson. Still garbage, but...
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's a shame.
It's
a shame that because it's been like that for a very long time.
It has, yeah. Like, it's pretty much been, in my opinion, at the end of the Heatles. I mean, East always performs well in the finals, but I think around the period of the Heatles is about the last time that I would sit there and say the East was somewhat competitive in the lower parts. But you looking at them and I'm going, it seems like for teams like the Bucks, you're going to get 20 to 30 games a year given to you, considering the poor performances of the lower part of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, that's right. So next week we have more games.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Ooh.
You know, as the games get played, there's going to be more clarity on the playoffs and who's going to finish where, and the more exciting thing is around the 8th spot in the West.
Yeah.
We have the Grizzlies currently holding the 8th seed. They're 2.5 games in front of Portland.
Yeah.
And they have to play the Spurs, the Pelicans, the Jazz, Oklahoma City, the Raptors, Boston, and then the Bucks. Do you think the Memphis Grizzlies will finish 8th or fall out of the 8th spot?
I think they fall out of the 8th spot simply because I think they lose to the Spurs because of veteran savviness of the Spurs. I think they beat the Pels. I think they beat the Jazz, but I don't see them beating the Raptors, the Celtics, or the Bucks. So the way I'm looking, and OKC, you sort of say they toss a coin because they're very similar in their playing style, very guard heavy. So I don't know if it's a matter of they won't drop to the 10th seed. There's no doubt about it. They'll be 8th or 9th. But I think that looking at Portland and the way Portland played, I think Portland, although have a very tough schedule as well, I think they end up jumping them.
Yeah, because Portland have to play the Celtics, the Rockets, the Nuggets, the Clippers, 76ers, Mavs, and the Nets.
Yeah,
so there's no easy games.
And I don't think
to the end.
Yeah, no easy games in that one. But I just think like they looked good, and Carmelo looked like Olympic Carmelo. He was shooting very well. So I think that Portland is going to jump the 8th seed the 8th seed just.
Yeah, the Grizzlies will be in the playoff spot for the 8th seed. They will be fighting for it coming from the 9th spot.
Yeah, they'll have
where they have to win 2 games as opposed to 1.
Yeah, I agree, and sadly, I don't think they will. I think Portland's just too good.
I want to see John Moran in the playoffs.
Well, John Moran, he didn't play very well though.
He struggled. He did struggle for the first half. He kind of picked it up.
He picked it back up. He came back with 22 points, 11 assists, and 5 rebounds.
And the game was close. So imagine if he'd started a bit better, could have been very different in the end.
Yeah, and then Jonas Valanciunas got into foul trouble. The big games for them though, are the next 2 because of the Spurs who are around them.
Well, yeah, they need to beat the Spurs and the Pels to sort of solidify that it's only going to be Portland chasing them.
Yeah, that's right.
You beat those 2 teams, you know you're going to be in that final 9 or 8 seed, and you're competing. So I think the next 2 games are the 2 key ones for them.
Yeah, I agree. Spurs, Pelicans, it would be very close. I look at the games, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to... I wouldn't be shocked if they lost every single game.
Neither. I wouldn't be shocked by that at all, and I think that's a real concern. But at the same time, I just don't see any of the teams, considering the way the Pelicans have played, beating enough teams to get in. But they do have an easy schedule. They're playing the Grizzlies, Kings, Wizards, Spurs, Kings, and Magic. That is super easy. Like the only 2 teams that I expect them to sort of like struggle against, obviously maybe the Spurs, and then the Grizzlies will be a tough matchup. They should be able to win out in the rest, but is it too late after losing 2 straight games to start the bubble?
Yeah, it's the Pelicans.
Yeah, the Pelicans.
They're not going to make the 9th spot.
You're already saying they're out.
They're done. Because I
agree. Like, pack your bags. I think it's done for
well,
the
from
Pelicans.
what I've seen so far, then the games have played, like they were always going to lose to the Clippers, and you most likely was going to... I wrote the Jazz off as a loss anyway.
Yeah.
But with how they're managing Zion's minutes and the type brand of basketball they're playing, they're not good enough to be in the 9th spot. And the other teams around them with the Spurs and the Kings and the Trailblazers are better than them and will beat them to the 9th spot.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that sort of aspect. The only thing I could say is that there's a lot of hard games to the Portland and the Pelicans, so I would love to see what sort of happens, because they could, as you said, easily lose out both Portland and Grizzlies, considering they're Celtics, Rockets, Clippers, 76ers. A lot of good teams ahead for those 2 teams, so they could easily drop 5 of their remaining games, and the Pelicans could win out, and it could be really close.
Yeah, because I was surprised the Spurs got the win against the Kings,
especially without Aldridge.
Yeah, because they've got the Grizzlies next, which is, as we just touched on, will be a huge game of who wins that, and then the 76ers, Nuggets, Jazz, Pelicans, Rockets, and then the Jazz again.
All I know is it's going to be exciting next week. So
yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I'm very excited to see how it all unfolds. That's it for today's episode. Thank you again for tuning in. As always, cheers to Rig and Choc. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, bro.
Quick one. What's the big matchup you're looking forward to this coming week?
Mate, I'm looking forward to Portland playing the Clips. And I think at that point in the schedule, it's going to be possible to jump over the Grizzlies to get to that 8th seed. So that's going to be a big matchup for me. And that's next Sunday, I believe, Australian time.
Choc, what about you?
I got Pelicans and Grizzlies Tuesday morning, 8:30. Battle of the Rookies.
Ooh. It's interesting. It's all going to unfold. Thanks again. Make sure you tune in next week where we cover the final few games before the playoffs.